So a little over a week ago, one of our boys wasn't feeling too well, so I took him to the doctor, or told him I was going to take him to the doctor. Even though he was feeling pretty rough and he knew that the doctor would help or be able to help, he immediately perked up at the mere mention of the words that we were going to the doctor. Now, I would be happy if just the mere mention was all that it took to make him well, but it was not. That was not the case. You and I know very well why he did not want to go to the doctor. If you are a parent, you know very well the fights that come when you mention the word doctor. If you are a kid or an adult, some of you, you know the fear that comes with the mention of the words, we're going to the doctor. He was terrified that he was going to have to get a shot. Now, I tried my best to assure him that what was going on with him did not require a shot, that they'd most likely just give him some medicine, and that was it. To me, it was no big deal. He wasn't having one single bit of it. He swore up and down, "Daddy, I'm fine. Everything, my ear doesn't hurt anymore. My throat doesn't hurt anymore." We could see he was still tugging on it, and his throat was red. He was hoarse. He wasn't buying it. He had good reason for that, too, and it's my fault. A few years ago, it was pre-COVID, I had to take the boys. I drew the short straw and took the boys for a routine checkup. Again, they were nervous about shots, and I swore up and down, "No. There is absolutely no way that you will need a shot this time. I've looked at the records. You're good to go. Everything will be fine. Don't worry about it." Guess what? Plural. There were shots. An S on the end of that word. Plural. Many shots were to be had. Big ones. Bad ones. Ones that hurt. So I kind of get it when the boys don't really believe me, don't really buy into my word when I say, everything's fine. It'll be okay. It'll be okay. I know that they know that Sherry and I will provide for them and care for them, but still, when it comes to taking my word on shots, they don't do it. I get it. I remember my parents telling me, "Don't worry, it'll be okay." I had a finger that was pointing sideways. "It'll be all right. It's fine." I broke 3 teeth, had to get 12 stitches, broke my nose, 2 black eyes. It's okay. Everything will be fine. A Band-Aid will fix it. It's all right. It wasn't the case. We do that as parents. But that stuff hurts. All of it. All of it. Now, here's a concept. I'm going to try it on my grandkids. I think my kids are shot. That's just, my word's gone with them. But what if we just say, you know what? This is going to hurt. You're going to get a shot. It's going to be a big one, but you're going to be okay. It'll be all right. I'm going to be right here with you the whole time. The whole time. And then we're going to go home. We're going to watch TV and eat some ice cream. Again, maybe I'll try that. We do that in adulthood too, though, don't we? Who in here remembers the Great Recession of 2006, 7, 8, 9, 10, all those years? I was starting a new career as a settlement agent in real estate. Yes, in 2006, real estate. I remember my boss saying, "It's okay. Everything's fine. It's all right." And then I had the first closing that I started saying, "Everything's all right." Then I went to fund the loan, and guess what? The bank had imploded. It was not all right. They had to go get a new loan. Taylor, Bean, and Whitaker was gone, and is still gone. I remember the bosses saying again, "It'll be fine. Everything's okay." Then we had pay cuts across the board. Then we lost health insurance benefits. Spouses, kids were no longer covered. 401k contributions, gone. They didn't even warn us of that one. That stung a bit. That stung. We tell young adult friends the same thing. Avoid certain relationships. You don't want to get into that. Avoid that person. But we don't tell them the loneliness that comes with that. We tell sick people, "It'll be okay. It's okay. Don't worry about it." But we don't warn them of the nights of lost sleep, fear, and anxiety that come along with that. But as humans, we value knowledge, don't we? Especially from our leaders. We want to know, we need to know where we're going. And sometimes we need to know that the ride that we're going on is going to be bumpy. It's going to hurt. There are going to be shots. There's going to be sickness. There are going to be leaders, good and bad. But it's okay. It may not make it easier, but it makes it easier to follow that leader. Now today we're walking through the 8th chapter of Daniel, in which Daniel has a dream roughly around the year 550 BC, so about 2 years after the vision that Father Chris led you through last week. Now, the interpretation of the vision in Daniel 8 is fairly straightforward, and it is the shortest, I think, of the chapters in Daniel. But in this, we see leaders rise and fall. In this vision, we see leaders rise and fall. And in its interpretation, we see a large swath of time covered. For example, verse 4 contains a summary of nearly 200 years of history in one verse alone. We see times of upheaval, times of conquest, war, defeat, devastation. But again, while it covers a large amount of history, and while it covers leaders both big and small, important and not so important, the message is the same. Leaders rise. Leaders fall. Empires rise. Empires fall. Men raise up men who fail. Men raise themselves up only to fail. But through it all, God is sovereign at every single turn and every single bump in history. And Daniel's vision gives us an insight into history that was troubling, very troubling. Yet the message revealed in the vision proves to be both humbling and sustaining for the people of God. Now, that's not always what we want to hear when we think of a vision from God, is it? We think of prosperity. We think of times of feasting, times of plenty, good times, times of deliverance from evil. But that's not the message of this chapter, really, of this book, is it? Yet here we have Daniel still in Babylon, being shown that Israel's exile is nearing the end of its life cycle, which sounds great if you stop right there. But then within the same vision, he's being shown that the return to the glorious land in verse 9, which is Israel, will not be a time of history in which God's chosen people can simply put on the cruise control and ease into eternity. But more on that next week from Father Chris. This message, this vision, mirrors what we're told in the other passages that we heard read today and the collect. Almighty and merciful God, it is by your grace only that your faithful people offer you true and laudable service. Grant that we may run without stumbling. And then we heard it in the psalm. We heard here that he is worthy of praise. He is worthy of everything that we have, everything that we need. Again, can God prepare a table in the wilderness? Yes, he can. Can God give bread also and meat for his people? Yes, he can, and he did. Can God make water rush out of the stone in the desert? Yes, he can, and he did. He does that for us. He provides for us. But we still need to remember. We still need to be reminded that it is going to be a bumpy road. The Israelites, how many times did they have to be reminded? How many times have you and I needed to be reminded? Now, John Walton sums this passage up really well by saying that the message within this vision is to be sealed up or hidden or preserved, is that the people of God must know and prepare for what they will have to face in the future. No matter what, no matter how world events play out, God is not only sovereign, but he is still sustaining them, just like he was earlier and just like he will be later. Walton says this: in the meantime, the Israelites were to live out their faith in a Gentile world under circumstances that would make it more and more difficult to do so. They had to count on the sovereignty of God to sustain them generation by generation, crisis by crisis. They also had to trust the power of God to control the flow of world empires as they rose and fell. It's a hard one. I'll read that again. They also had to trust the power of God to control the flow of world empires as they rose and fell. God's agenda is never in jeopardy. Nevertheless, they were to be prepared for the long term. Now, I hope that message comes through clearly for all of us today. We need this message in a world of quick fixes, don't we? Don't like your job? What do? You go and get a new one. That'll make everything better. You don't like your church? What do? You find one that preaches what you want to hear. That'll help you sleep better at night. You don't like your spouse? What do? You get a new one. That'll make you happy. So they say. You don't like your government? Just wait an election cycle. After all, your chosen party is only one election away from everlasting peace and security here on earth, right? We prefer quick fixes rather than playing the long game, but that's not what we're shown in the Scriptures. Daniel 8, as well as the words of Jesus, teach us far better than that. In the 8th chapter of Daniel, we see verses 1 through 8 and 20 through 23, showing us that God steadies His people to walk through the maze of powers and empires, of rulers and nations that rise and fall throughout this course of history. And in verses 9 through 19 and 23 through 26, we are taught that throughout all of that, throughout the ups and the downs, the wars and the famines, God has forearmed and forewarned His people to face the crises of history. Jesus Himself tells us that it won't be easy. It will not be easy. He also tells us that there will be wars and rumors of wars. World powers will rise and fall, but these are not the end. I needed to hear that. As a young Baptist, every war we had, I was packing my backpack to go to heaven. Jesus is coming back. Oh, there's a war in Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan, all those. Grenada, remember that one? That was a short one. But God is sovereign through all of this. God has not forgotten us. God is still in control. He's still in control. We who believe are still His people. We are still called to live lives of faith, placing our hope, our trust, and our salvation in His hands and not those of the world or the leaders around us. Now, who here struggled in math? Come on. I know y'all are nerdy Anglicans, but you're not that nerdy. Somebody else had to struggle in math. Somebody. Okay, one. Thank God. All right. So I know I did. I frustrated many, many math teachers in school, and they frustrated me too. It was equal. I can remember many times in math class thinking, I am never going to need to know how to do that. I will never need to know how to do that. This stuff is crazy. You are wasting my time. In the 7th grade, she was wasting my time. Well, kids, guess what? You do, and you will. And Miss Isbell, if you're watching this, I'm sorry. You were right. But I can think of history lessons where I was thinking, why on earth would I care about this? Why do I need to know what happened in Alabama history in 1832? History repeats itself. That's why. I can think of many times when my dad was trying to show me how to do something, and we were both on the verge of wanting to strangle the ever-loving breath out of each other. And I was thinking, I don't need to know how to do this. I can drain a water heater. I can tear apart a washer and a dryer. I can do that because He showed me how to do that. He prepared me. These verses that we've heard today, this vision, this passage is here to remind us, to prepare us. There will come a time when we will need this. And if we don't, we still must teach it to the future generations who will. This vision given to Daniel was meant to be sealed up for a later time because there would come a day when God's people would need this message. Again, this message wasn't for the present that Daniel was facing, but it was for the future and for future generations of God's people. And I, for one, am thankful because I need this reminder quite often. So let's be glad and rejoice that God has told us, that He's not told us, rather, don't worry. God hasn't told us there will never be sickness. You'll never need a shot. Don't worry, I promise your promised land will never see war. No, God doesn't brush it off and try to convince us that everything will always be okay. Instead, He promises us that through it all, He is with us and He will never lead us. Through the vision that God gave Daniel, He prepared them for what the future held. The vision of the evenings and of the mornings that has been told is true. To seal up the vision, for it refers to many days from now. So remain faithful. Remain strong. Don't flee from your faith and fear, but cling fast to the Lord, who knit you together and holds you right now. Through times of doubt, through times of fear, through times of sickness and war, God's love for you remains, and God remains sovereign through it all. John 16:1 reminds us, I have said all these things to you to keep you from falling away. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.